I want to give you guys another story that is coming in from France. This is Paris. And it's somewhat shocking because of how rare this is. But basically, a teacher in France gets what they thought at the time was beheaded. Now, the guy who did this was apparently a gunman who screamed Allah Akbar as they did this. And this is to a person who was working at a school, some kind of school staff. That person dies. Now, what they find was that the person wasn't beheaded, the person was stabbed in the throat. Um, yes, that's better, I suppose, but the person died at the end of the day. It was tragic and barbaric, and so I'm not sure how much better a stabbing in the throat is compared to a trying to cut somebody's head off. But nevertheless, whatever that distinction is there, and that person did die. This is right here. This tweet is the latest. A person in the middle of the street in Conflans Sante Horine, the author who shouted, or the person who shouted, Allah Akbar, and threatened the police with a weapon, was shot dead in Irgene, Suez, after a chase. Now, let's go back a little bit further because I want to go to what they thought was taking place also. And by the way, this is the anti-terrorist unit in France, meaning this was the unit that was responded when they thought it was a terrorist incident. Let's keep going. BAC agents neutralize anti-terrorism, Bureau of Anti-Terrorism, neutralized with 10 shots an individual having beheaded a man near a school in Conflans-Sainte Horine. The person who shouted Allah Akbar and threatened police in the chase was shot dead. The anti-terrorist prosecution, or I would guess they were saying unit, is basically looking into the facts of what happened. They make the point that this had to do with the Charlie Hebdo shooting. The man who was beheaded, a teacher, allegedly showed the caricatures of Mohammed published by Charlie Hebdo during a course which was and motivated the act of the killer. So they're thinking that the reason that the person did this was because the teacher showed a Charlie Hebdo, and that this somehow, to the person, justified the murder of the teacher. Think about that for the moment. Put yourself in the headspace. What does it need to take to get into the headspace that this caricature of your God person justifies the killing and the murder of a person? Now, the thing is, depending upon how you were raised, depending upon your society, depending upon your environment, you may come to that conclusion. I would argue that that conclusion is wrong, but from their context, they would argue that the conclusion is right and that this is the most important thing in regards to priorities, not the preservation of human life, but no, in this case, that life matters less than the offense of my quote unquote prophet. Astonishing. Not to mention, you're in somebody else's country. If I am in the Middle East and I am driving through Jordan, and or let's say I'm driving through issues of Palestine, areas of Palestine, and this is real life, the woman that I'm with, the guy says something about prayer, and I'm about to make a statement saying, yeah, I don't buy into that nonsense. She gives me a look that basically is telling me to shut the fuck up. Acknowledge where you are, understand where you are. And the thing that you're about to say is going to get both of us in a lot of trouble. Meaning, understood that when I am in their territory, even though I still find it grotesquely unacceptable for that behavior to take place, that I cannot say and do everything that I want. I am not free in this regard. Just like in this country, I am not free to do any and everything that I want in this regard. By the same token, they are not free to murder somebody because they don't like the depiction of the prophet. It's nonsense. You're in a different country. And in that different country, in the same way I had to respect their local customs, you have to respect the local customs in France, which allows you to ridicule, talk about, bring up, laugh at, joke, pretty much anything. Nothing is sacred in this regard. This is the country to which you chose to come to. And yeah, in that case, that was the country he chose to die in. Um, I'm sure they tried to apprehend him clearly, but at the end of the day, it's a gunman. He just murdered somebody. He knew what was going to happen to him. Um, Also, there's something else. When this took place, I also thought to myself, how how often does this happen? Meaning, how often does cops in France kill or murder the population? In the United States, it's over 1,000. And these aren't terrorists that are screaming Allah Akbar and chopping people's heads off. This is the home population to which we are talking about. The United States is over 1,000, 99% of which there are no prosecutions and the person walks. I asked you, what does that incentivize? Does that incentivize a person not killing, or does it incentivize a person to kill, knowing that 99% of the time you will walk? 1,000 killings a year. 1,000 killings a year. France, when you're looking at the number of deaths, 26. 26. And just so we're clear, let's see. Hope you can see this. And if we take a look at these numbers are ungodly. These numbers are ungodly. Over 1,000 killings for the year. I'll leave it here. I mean, right now it's a developing story. It's what's taking place in France. I mean, this is pretty much up to the minute at this point. My wife loves France. And I remember we were at a part where I thought I could live here. That's how much we enjoyed our trip or our travel there. So places where we feel a kinship to, I tend to follow and focus. I would probably follow it more closely if I understood the language. But tragic on all sorts of levels. From a societal standpoint, meaning you're dealing with integration, integrating people into your society that came from a radically different society in regards to the way that they regarded that stuff. You have an issue with cops of trying to apprehend this suspect and not having the tools necessary to bring the person in without the person being killed. And that's assuming that the cops didn't go into that with the whole notion that this person was going to die in the process. But however you view this, through a governmental lens, a societal lens, a cultural lens, or even from the standpoint of a juxtaposition or a comparison between the US and the way our cops function and the way French cops function, 26 compared to 1,000. And I understand that the United States is 300 million in its population, but even if you take it in comparison, it's not even close. It's not even close. Like, share,